Welcome to another edition of Inside Town Hall. I'm Jim Cameron, your host and the program director here at Darien TV 79. And you, as a faithful viewer, know that Inside Town Hall is a chance for us to get to know some of the folks that help run Darien town government. And we have two guests today on the program, faces you will probably recognize, and a topic which you probably don't think about, and that's our sewers. So please welcome Craig Flaherty, who is the chairman of the Sewer Commission, and Ed Gentile, who is the director of Darien Public Works. Gentlemen, welcome to Inside Town Hall.
Hey, Jim. Thank you very much, Jim.
Good to have you. Let's talk a little bit about your background, because people recognize you by your face, but they don't know where you're coming from, what it is that exactly it is you do. Craig, aside from going to the best engineering school in the United States.
Go Engineers, not Mountain Hawks.
Yeah, we both went to the same school. Talk a little bit about your professional work.
So I did I graduate with a civil engineering degree and actually ended up going into a field specific to that degree. I am the president and senior engineer of a local land use consulting company by the name of Redness and Mead. We do land surveying, civil engineering, and zoning consulting. And civil engineering, effectively, the way I practice it is everything that happens outside of a building and has to do with the infrastructure and the land that supports construction. And specifically, I've focused over the years on stormwater management, floodplain management, hydrology, and things like that. But another component of that is the design of sewer systems that support our lifestyles.
Great. And Ed Gentile.
Thanks, Jim. I also graduated from college in civil engineering degree, BS in civil engineering. But I started off in Craig's zone with a private consulting and engineering firm locally, but then went over to the, as they call it, the dark side, and took a job with the city of Stamford, and was there for 11 years as the assistant city engineer. Fortunately, I had the opportunity to work with Craig there while I was on staff with the city. I moved on to another position outside Stamford, but then luckily about 9 years ago, I took this job here with the town of Darien as the director of public works, and again have the opportunity to work with Craig closely on some things. But the main issue with the sewers comes down to, with like everything else, our civil engineering background has helped us quite a bit in that area. And I think between having a sewer commission chairman that has such a background and a director of public works that has such a background, I think we're bringing quite a bit of ammunition to the town of Darien in the area of our sanitary sewer, which is I consider to be the most important infrastructure piece in the town that we have to protect and keep up and running.
And in addition to working with Craig on the Sewer Commission, as the director of public works, you're responsible for everything from snow plowing to tree removal, all kinds of stuff too, right?
Correct. I run the transfer station. I handle the parking lots also here in town. I handle all the facilities, town hall, DPW garage, police station, some of the outbuildings for the Parks and Rec. So I do facility maintenance on those also. So yeah, I'm spread out quite a bit, but sewers is one of the departments I have a big handle on.
Great. Well, Craig, let's talk specifically about the Sewer Commission. How many people serve on it? How do they get to serve, and what are the responsibilities of the Sewer Commission?
Sure. The way I look at the Sewer Commission is on a base level, we are citizen oversight of the care of our sewers. The people that do the real work are Ed and the folks that work for Ed. We're the citizens that sit on the commission and oversee that work being done. We do have a little more authority than some of the other committees in town, which I will explain. There's 5 members, and we currently have a full slate of 5. As with the ratios in town, I think usually 3 are Republicans and 2 are Democrats, if I have that correct. And we're interviewed and appointed by the Board of Selectmen to serve, usually having been recommended either by the RTC or DTC ahead of time for those positions. But in addition to kind of just the base citizen oversight, the Sewer Commission, through state law, is given pretty broad authority to care for the sewer systems, and that would include special assessments and taxation. So we could do that independently. We don't, by virtue of protocol with the town. Any budgets still get reviewed and approved by the Board of Selectmen and the Board of Finance as well,
And the RTM.
and the RTA.
And you have taxing authority, as you mentioned, and people might know the Sewer Commission because they recently got a tax bill. These come out every 6 months, once a year?
Every year.
Every year. And the rates recently went up slightly, and we can talk a little bit about that. But you have independent taxing authority separate from whatever the town might be charging in terms of property tax.
Yes, correct.
Right.
It's handled, the sewer user fee is handled separately. We are the ones that review the budget to maintain the sewer system, and we're the ones that set the rate.
Now, the sewers, correct me if I'm wrong, but they're only one of 2 sets of pipes that run underneath our streets. That the sewers are separate from stormwater runoff. Is that correct?
Very, very important point, Jim, and people should know the difference. You might hear storm sewer, you might hear storm drain, you might hear sanitary sewer, and you might come to the conclusion that sewers are sewers, and they're not. So when the rain falls out of the sky and it hits the ground and it runs off to a catch basin, it'll end up in a pipe under the ground that is solely for storm and rainwater. But the sewers are supposed to only handle effectively the effluent coming out of a home or business. So the stuff that goes down the drain, whether you're flushing a toilet or taking a shower or washing a dish.
And we have storm sewers around all of the town, but there are parts of the town that may not have sewers as well too, right?
Correct. I was looking at the map recently. I would say something around 75% or more of the land area of the town has access to the sanitary sewer system, but the other properties that don't have access to a sanitary sewer system would have their own on-site septic system that treats the effluent coming out of their individual structure in a series of leaching fields or galleries underground in their yard.
And people who have septic don't pay sewer tax.
That's correct.
Okay. Ed, how many miles of pipe do we have for stormwater runoff and for the sewer system?
Well, stormwater runoff, that we have, I think, close to 38, 40 miles of road, but sanitary sewer is more specific because we have to actually keep that as an asset for the town, as a matter of fact. So we have 81 miles of sanitary sewer. We have 14 pump stations that we have to maintain. We also have 10 miles of force main piping included in that also. So
And what is that?
quite a large system.
What's a forced main?
That would be a pipe that's under pressure. So from these pump stations, we have to move generally sewer effluent through a pipe, a forced main, to an area where it can continue to move gravity wise. So we're basically pumping out of a low spot to an area where a pipe the discharge can be taken away by gravity flow. We have, like you said, over 10 miles of that type of piping.
So when I flush the toilet or the dishwasher drains in my house, or the washing machine, it disappears. It goes somewhere out into the street, and where does it go from there? I mean, how does it get pumped out? Does it just flow under gravity? How does it get from my house to wherever it is it's going? And we'll talk about the ultimate destination.
It could be both. Some properties have their own individual small pumps that will pump into the common sewer. Most houses and businesses, it flows out in a pipe under the street by gravity. And from there, you can imagine an 81-mile network under the town of Darien that is moving that along. It could be that water, that effluent, has to go through 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 different pump stations as it getting from the east side of the town to the west side of the town. But most importantly, to your question, most of the water ends up at a pump station at Weed Beach, just on the left side as you're entering. You may recall cylindrical brick buildings that were an old tertiary treatment system. That's where our pump station is, our largest pump station is, which actually pumps the effluent under the harbor and over to the city of Stamford. So all of our effluent is treated at the wastewater treatment plant in the city of Stamford before being released to Long Island Sound. And that's our biggest budget item each year, is writing a check to the city of Stamford to treat our waste.
Greg Flaherty is the chairman of the Sewer Commission, and Ed Gentile also joining us, the director of Public Works, today on Inside Town Hall. We're talking about pipes under the street and our sewer system. So how long does it take? I guess it depends where I live in Darien, but how long does it take to get from my house to that pumping station and over to Stamford to get treated?
I would guess anywhere between minutes and hours, depending on where you are.
It depends on it depends on the flows that are coming through there. I know that Craig just touched on our budget and our cost to the city of Stamford. I got to give you a percentage that we look at every year to see where we fluctuate. We're anywhere between 60 to 72% of our budget is the payments to the city of Stamford, which I hope we'll get into the things that I know Craig and I want to talk about more, is improvements that we're making to reduce that number.
And what does the city of Stamford sewage treatment plant do to the sewage to treat it?
Well, removes the solids,
Yeah.
adjusts the pH, obliterates viruses viruses with UV radiation and bleach or chlorine. I think they have a recycling for the sludge ultimately that comes out of it. But when it's deemed clean enough, it flows out into Long Island Sound.
So it's fully EPA compliant, I assume?
Yeah, they actually have exceeded drinking water quality standards for many years. In fact, they get some nitrogen credits back for the fact that their nutrient loading is so low when it discharges.
Now, there's some things that we should not be flushing down our toilets, that from being a faithful viewer of the Sewer Commission meetings, I hear cause all kinds of havoc at your pumping stations. What should we not be putting down the John?
Want to take that one, Ed?
Sure. Well, let's start off with the all-knowing flushable wipes. The word flushable. I'll tell you, that was our biggest problem when I first started here in 2014. We were daily stopping pumps and clearing them of the wipes that would get caught up inside the impellers. And the impellers are what moves the water through the pump. We've since then have upgraded our pump impellers to ones that shred those things, but we still on occasion have issues with those flushable wipes. they're only flushable because they go down the toilet. They're not flushable because they're cooperative with our pumps at these pump stations. So that's one of them. The other item that we're running into, and we've just started to hear a little bit more about these, is we're getting dental floss. We are running into, on one of our pump stations, a high level of dental floss. I applaud the folks with their oral hygiene, but the dental floss needs to go someplace else because it's actually getting caught up in the bearings of the pumps themselves. So that was a new one. That was a new one.
Yeah, the way you want to think about it is if it comes out of your body, that can be flushed. But any of the other products that you might use, you want those to fall apart and disintegrate when they are mixed with water over time, right? So anything that's like one of those baby wipes, that's a no-go because it just stays together and then it starts balling with other baby wipes and literally creates large obstructions over time. You know, paper towels should not go down there. They're not designed to fall apart. You know, the Bounty commercials they're designed to stay together when you're wiping things up. That's I think a good way to think about it.
And then Craig, I think that the last piece that makes all of that really stick together really good is fats, oils, and greases.
Yeah.
You know, you should do your best to set that aside and let it coagulate. Throw that out in the garbage, not down the drain. Though that hot water is really good. By the time it hits that pipe out in the sewer main in the street, the temperature of that water has dropped significantly, which means all of this now, the oils and fats and greases are coagulating, and they're going to start to stick to the pipe or whatever seems to be flowing down the sewer itself.
Yeah, we freeze our bacon grease and then throw it out in a peanut butter jar. Actually, is what we use.
There you go.
You could give it to the squirrels. I think they would probably like it too.
Yeah, maybe I could work on a craft project.
Yeah, that's right. Is there anything that we could do from our homes to keep things flowing properly? Are there additives? Should we run a lot of hot water? What can we do aside from the things you've already said not to flush? What can we do to make sure that the flow is unimpeded?
I don't think that there's anything proactive that an individual needs to do other than, you know, keep their system in good maintenance. You know, there are some things we don't want in. So if, say, you have a sump pump in your house, that should not be discharging to the sanitary sewer, right? That sump pump is taking clean groundwater. And if that sump pump puts that clean groundwater into the system, well, step one, it's inflating the 70% of our budget that we have to pay Stanford to clean groundwater. And number two, it's taking up capacity in that 80 miles of pipe and those 14 pump stations that doesn't need to be taken up by clean water. Some pumps should just discharge out to landscape in a thoughtful location. Same thing with roof leaders or gutters or area drains. That's really one of the big efforts that the town is going through right now, is to find those sources of clean water. We use the term inflow and infiltration, basically fresh water, surface water, groundwater getting into the system. We're trying to find that clean water and keep it out of our system to reduce the cost that we're paying Stanford and to, you know, reduce the maintenance costs of our pump station and increase the capacity of our system.
Now, if I have a garbage disposal, which will grind up everything short of, you know, complete animal bones, is that helping your effort at all, as opposed to just trying to shove those food bits down the drain?
It's not great. Garbage disposals aren't great. They're convenient, I suppose, for folks that have them and like them, but having a lot of that material in the system is not great. It's not great for the distribution system, and it's not great really for the treatment process when you end up with higher level of organics and nutrients.
And from your many years serving on the advisory committee for sustainability, you would probably advise us to take those food scraps up to the transfer station and put them in the food mulch containers instead, right?
That would be the best place for it.
Great. Ed, how old are our sewers?
We had dates back to the 1930s, the system in place. I'd say the majority of the older system was in the 50s. We've had some upgrades to when they went over to PVC in the mid 70s, and then expansions through the 90s and 2000. So, but the majority of our system is at least 50 to 70 years old, and made of material that has stood the test of time, but is presenting itself as an area that needs some attention. And I think that's what we're doing now with our studies, the I&I study, identifying areas and materials and locations that need attention that will eliminate the infiltration of inflow and infiltration into the system that we're paying for over in Stanford. That is one of the big projects we started a couple of years ago, and with the support of the Sewer Commission, we've continued to do that work, and we're just in the midst of doing a big piece there. A couple phases of the first report have already started.
Now, given that these sewers are what, 10, 15 feet under the street, how do you maintain them? How do you know if they're having a leak or, as you say, groundwater is leaking into them?
Well, currently, there's different methodologies to use to do that. There's flow isolation that you can do. You block off sections and you see if water's getting into the pipe, even though you're blocking the flow. So that's one area. We do a lot of CCTV work, basically running a
Closed
robot
circuit
camera.
television.
Yes, robot camera down the pipe to identify any infiltration or any inflows through the joints of the pipe or any defects in the pipe. And we were able to find a few this last 8 miles that we've gone out and fixed already. So this is the systems that we use now. It's a quick identifier for us, but we also use that CCTV work to identify pipelining sections and areas where we need rehabilitations on inverts of pipes. That those pipe liners are just basically I don't know, consider a soft liner. We shoot through the pipe, we inflate it, and then we harden it, and it becomes as hard as a PVC pipe and structurally as sound.
And one of the Ed Gentile's our guest. He's the director of public works, joining Craig Flaherty, the chairman of the Sewer Commission. And we're having, I don't know, to me, a fascinating discussion about our sewer system because, as you said, it's probably the most important piece of infrastructure in the town. People worry about the roads and everything, but they don't think twice about the sewers until they stop working. And one of the things that I believe the Sewer Commission has dealt with in the past is the problem of blockage and backflow, where the sewer starts flowing into your house instead of out of the house. And there's a solution to that, right?
There is.
You want to jump on that one,
Sure.
Rick?
So there's a few things that can cause a sewer blockage. We were talking about, wipes and fats, oils, and grease that can restrict the flow in a pipe. We'll get grease accumulation over time, similar to your arteries, which will make the pipe smaller and smaller if grease isn't handled properly. And then maybe someone will flush a hand towel or set of rags down the toilet and they shouldn't have, and all of a sudden you've got a block. So the most important thing is that you want, if now sewage is building up behind that blockage, it wants to find the lowest point to come out. So we want to hope that might be a sanitary manhole lid in the street, and it starts bubbling out of that, and it's observed, and our DPW crew can quickly go after it. But occasionally, that lowest point could be a fixture inside of a home or business nearby, right? Especially if you have fixtures in your basement, laundry machine in your basement, or a slop sink in your basement, or even some low first floors that might be below the elevation of the street can be susceptible to that. So it is important for people to consider, do they think their house is low relative to the street? Do they think that their basement fixtures are low in relation to the street? And if so, those houses really should have their own backflow preventer, right? So that if there was any surge in the sanitary sewer system, it's not coming back into their house. And over time, we've sent out mailers on this. Many people can call DPW directly. DPW will give them some assistance and guidance on whether they think one is necessary. But ultimately, that's self-protection.
And that's something that the homeowner has to pay to install. Is that right?
Correct. It would be their backflow preventer.
And what does that cost?
Well, I suppose it depends on the situation, whether you're digging or installing it in the home. So yeah, the best answer I can give you is it depends.
But if you don't have a backflow preventing valve and the sewage comes into your house, who's responsible, the homeowner or the sewer commission?
It's really the homeowner. We have put, I think we've issued this letter 4 or 5 times at this point, letting folks know that this is something that can happen, and they would be on the hook. Otherwise, they would have to bring a claim to the sewer commission in the town for us to consider it.
And there have been such claims in the past. And the horror stories that you hear from people of what happened because they didn't realize what was going on, and they come home and there are inches, if not feet, of raw sewage in their crawl space, their rec room, wherever. Pretty nasty stuff, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I think that the adjudication of such a claim, you'd get into, what was the action that created the situation? There have been instances where we had hired a contractor to do certain work, and there was an issue with the work that was done that caused the blockage. That's more clearly going to be something the town or the contractor is likely to take responsibility for. But if it's kind of normal maintenance or normal wear and tear or a huge rainfall event, act of God, it's going to be harder to make that claim if you didn't have a backflow preventer as you should have.
So how does a heavy rainfall affect the flow of the sanitary sewer? Because we just talked a few minutes ago about the fact that wastewater that falls from the sky goes down its own set of pipes, doesn't it?
Yeah, we also mentioned the idea that clean water can get into our system. And so that includes rainwater, includes floodwaters, includes groundwaters. It could be some pump from a house. It could be an improperly connected drain or roof leader. It could also just be our 80-year-old plus or minus system and the cracks and fissures and leaks that have developed in it over time. And that's one of the things we're going through when we're cameraing these lines or doing flow monitoring in these lines. We'll actually put a meter in the pipe, monitor the flow at the same time we're monitoring rain gauges. And so if we get a rain event and a certain set of pipes is showing a huge spike during that rain event, we know we're getting clean water in the system, and that's an area to focus on in terms of maintenance. When we line some of these old, 80-year-old tile pipes, each of those tile sections could be a point of weakness for inflow. After we line it, it's plugged as if it was a brand new pipe. So again, we're trying to keep that out of there, but it's a big problem. I think the worst part of it is when you get these significant storms like Elsa and Ida we had a couple of years ago, because you get a river that floods up over the top of your manhole lids, and you could get a significant amount of water pouring into the sewer system.
Craig Flaherty, Chairman of the Sewer Commission, and Ed Gentile, Director of Public Works, joining us inside Town Hall today. I am Jim Cameron, your host, and ever curious about our infrastructure, especially that hidden part of what goes on underneath the streets. One of the interesting things that happens at your sewer commission meetings quite often is people appear to appeal their bill, and it turns out that your sewer bill is based not on how much sewage you have created, but how much water you use. And if they had a serious leak or an unattended problem with their water supply, suddenly their sewer bill has spiked because of what? How do you equate the amount of water I'm using with how much sewage I'm creating?
Yeah, this is a good area to talk about. We don't have meters on your sewer pipe leaving your house, but the water company has meters on the domestic water coming in. So the easiest way for us to figure out how much sewage you're using or discharging into the system is to look at your water bill, and we get those directly from the water company, and that helps us figure out how much to charge you. Now we look at only your water bill in the case of residents, only your water bill from November through March, November, December, January, February, and March, that 5-month period, because we don't want to get water that you're irrigating with or washing your car with or filling your pool with all those outdoor uses in the other months of the year. So we're really honing in on what we think is just your domestic usage, which is pretty well represented by those 5 months of the year. And then we scale that up for 12 months, and that is what your bill is based on. I like to say, I don't know what I like to say, but I have said, you pay for it coming and going. You pay for the water you're using from Aquarian, and you're paying us when you get rid of it. So you should be properly incentivized to conserve water where appropriate, because it helps both sides of that equation. But you can get a leaky toilet. You can get a drippy faucet. A drippy faucet might not look like a big deal, but when it's going 24 hours a day for 30 days a month for a few months, it can triple or quadruple your sewer bill.
How do I know if I have a leaky toilet? I mean, I could probably see a drip of water out of a sink, but my toilet's just sitting there. It's just doing nothing. How do I know it's leaking?
I would say listen and look, right? Sometimes you'll see a little ripple. Sometimes you'll hear a little something that sounds like water flow. Unfortunately, when we end up seeing appeals, it's because, oh, that was my guest bathroom. I'm never up there. I didn't look at, I use auto pay on my water bill. I didn't notice until 3 months later that this water was discharging. It happened to be January, February, and March, and October comes and I get a sewer bill that's 3 times the bill I'm used to. That's maybe kind of a typical story that we hear. We like folks to take some personal responsibility. We're usually pretty accommodating when it's an anomaly, but if you've let the thing run without properly maintaining things, we're going to look for you to share part of that cost.
And there is at least one member of the sewer commission who is, to my eye, objective eye, rather unforgiving. And we won't mention who that is.
Well, look, I'll give a shout out to each of our commission members. We have what I believe is a phenomenal commission. We have someone who is actually a wastewater treatment plant operator. We have the longest serving member of the commission, maybe 15 years now, Peter. We got 2 members in Reese and Susan that have a long history of volunteering for the town on the Wetlands Commission, on the Planning and Zoning Commission. We have a lot of really long-term town knowledge and applicable knowledge on that commission. To Ed's point, if you needed to replace the sewer system, we're talking hundreds of millions of dollars. That's the asset that we're trying to protect, and it's not cheap.
One of the things I believe you can do if you're wondering if your toilet is leaking is, I'm not even sure if Aquarian still gives them out, but you can get some little colored tablets to drop them into the tank.
Yeah.
And before you flush, see if that color is suddenly showing up in the bowl, which means that the water is leaking through. So that's a good tell. There's your free tip from TV 79.
And Jim, let me just add, I think most of the appeals come in. We do have a young lady here in the office that analyzes it, and if we could, I want to give Penny a shout out. She does a phenomenal job in taking down the information, walking the folks through the appeal process, gathering the information and presenting it to the commission. But what she looks for is the anomaly or the peak. And since the water company has switched over to monthly bills, you're able to see that a little bit better now than it was when it was quarterly. So I think that's a great opportunity for the residents to to at least look at the bill. You know, my usage is at 10 CCF, and all of a sudden now it's 30.
Look at your water bill. Yeah, even if you're on auto pay, you'll get that email. Just look at the number, make sure it makes sense each month.
Those numbers are going up too. I mean, our local water company is asking for another rate increase, and it's getting significant. I mean, it's the sort of thing people should be noticing, and if it goes up any more than usual, that's when I guess you should be wondering what's going on. And who do I call? I mean, my water bill has gone up. I call the water company. I mean, they're happy because they're selling me more water. Do I need to talk to a plumber? Is there somebody that can come in and do a site inspection? How does that work?
Well, I think that in looking at the bill, I wouldn't just look at the quantity that you pay, because that, of course, as you see, the rates are going up. What they do break down is your monthly uses over a year's period. That's the graph or the identifiers you want to look at. And your first phone call should be to the water company, right? They are usually really good at giving you some direction on, okay, let's come out and let's take a look if there's a leak just past your meter. Then next they'll probably ask you to bring in your plumber to check your fixtures in your house. That would be your first two steps, because when you come in and ask for that appeal, we do have 5 educated individuals there. They're going to want to know where did the water go? Why do you believe the town, this sewer commission should take homage on this one request and grant your appeal? They want to know some information.
Yeah, but before we grant one, if we do choose to grant it, we're going to want to know that it's resolved. So you would take action to work with the water company and your plumber to resolve it first, and then come to us second.
And in all fairness to the members of the sewer commission, I have seen you be rather generous and understanding when somebody has done the right thing and throws themselves on the mercy of the commission, and quite often you reduce the bill accordingly, because I don't think you're out to get people. You're not out. This is not like red light cameras in Stamford trying to trap people and make more money for the town. You're just trying to cover your costs.
Yeah, the way I look at it is, if we're presented with better information than the information we had when we created the bill, it's worth considering.
Greg Flaherty, Chairman of the Sewer Commission, Ed Gentile, Director of Public Works. As we wrap up this conversation about our sewer system, is there anything you want to add? Is there anything new that's on the horizon? Is there something we should be looking forward to improve things, or gird our loins for another sewage tax increase?
Well, that's a great prompt. What I'll say is, honestly, and maybe it's the civil engineer in me, or the fact that I'm the chairman of the sewer commission, we're at a pretty exciting inflection point. We have spent the last couple of years on a very broad sewer system evaluation, and we have completed the first major phase of that evaluation, and now finally have a set of recommendations of where to go to fix the system, what improvements to make, where to focus on. And we've got 3 phases planned, one of which is 99% complete and in place already, and 2 phases coming up this year and then the following year. And what I'm hoping to see is a reduction in the amount of water that we're sending to Stamford, because we've done such a good job of repairing these leaks and upgrading the system. That's the hope, right? We're hoping for this return on investment, and within a year or 2, we should actually start to see the fruits of our labor.
Ed, you used to work for the city of Stamford, and now you're representing obviously taxpayers in Darien. Do you get the sense sometimes, maybe I'm just picking up, reading between the lines, that conversations at the sewer commission, do you get the sense sometimes that Stamford's trying to take us for a ride and charge us more for what they're doing to our sewage than is warranted?
I
You're on the record, sir.
I know. We have a really good relationship with the city of Stamford WPCA. I'm not going to say that it wasn't without its bumps and bruises at the very beginning. But Bill Brink and Rudine Bull have been fantastic with us over the last couple of years in providing us information during the invoicing process every year to show us what they're spending money on, and willing to sit down and walk us through their capital projects, their improvements that are related to the town of Darien's contribution. So I have to say it has gotten to the point where I think we're a little bit past that, maybe the trust period. The trust has grown stronger. I appreciate the work that they do. Because I don't make it easy for them. I have good questions because I've like you said, I was with the city of Stamford. I'm able to read their accounting stuff a little bit differently because I've pretty much worked with it for 10, 11 years. But they are good at getting us the information when we ask for it. And I think that's all we can ask. I would go through their invoices with a fine tooth comb because that's part of the job. That's what the sewer commission expects from me. I'm with Craig though. There is going to be a time when I'm going to present to them the fruits of our labor, a reduction in the flows going over there because of the hard work that we've done. I think our next conversation with the city of Stamford is a reduction in the percentages minimums that I can, or the minimums I can present, because we do have a contract with them, because we are getting a benefit from the work that we're doing, the I&I study and their recommendations for construction improvements.
Do they have a capacity problem? Are they at any risk of not being able to handle increased flow, either from Darien or from Stamford?
Not that I'm aware of at all. I mean, like everybody else along the coast that has an older system, they have I&I issues too that they're addressing.
I&I.
Inflow and infiltration.
Got
that clean water.
It's that clean water Craig spoke about that's getting into our system, whether through cracks in pipes, through manholes, through some pumps, things like that.
And Craig, you mentioned that they do such a good job in treating the sewage that they receive some nitrogen credits, was it?
Yeah, this is kind of it's similar to the cap and trade concept as run by the DEP. So if you have an old treatment plant and you're discharging too much nitrogen into Long Island Sound, nitrogen being one of the really environmental markers for degrading the water quality in Long Island Sound. But if you have an old treatment plant and you're discharging too much nitrogen, then you're going to be required to buy credits effectively from a treatment plant that is well below those limits. So it's a way effectively to disincentivize the polluters and incentivize the people that are doing a good job cleaning things up.
And does Stamford share those nitrogen credits with us?
Absolutely. So whatever percentage that we contributed to the treatment of effluent in that given year, we will get a like percentage of those credits.
And given the age of our system, and is there any federal money that's available under the new Build Back Better plan that could help us rebuild part of our aging infrastructure?
I'll let you take that, Ed.
Sure. Let's start with how we started. This whole study started with a clean water grant, provided us 55% of a $700,000 study, which is quite significant. Now I'm able to put that $355,000 back into the construction recommendations that study has put forth for us. What the other piece is, our first phase is funded by ARPA. We use the ARPA funds to do that first phase, a critical structural issue with the pipe, not high on infiltration or inflow, but we found some structural issues and we were able to correct those quickly. And that ARPA fund came in handy. So those are two sources that we use right now.
ARPA is the American Recovery. I don't know. It's money that was from the pandemic days. Thank you.
Pandemic money. Yes, that's
right. Pandemic money helping our sewers. There you go. Right there. Gentlemen, I thank you for your time. Is there anything else you want to add? I think most importantly, just because you can flush it down doesn't mean you should flush it down.
Yeah.
Baby wipes, Swifters, dental floss. Don't flush it down.
That's a new one.
Grease, don't flush it down. Save it, put it in the waste stream at the waste treatment state at the dump as well too. Big takeaways from our conversation with Craig Flaherty, the director of the chairman of the Sewer Commission, sorry, and Ed Gentile, the director of Public Works. Thank you, both you gentlemen, for your service to this town. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Jim.
Jim, thank you very much.
And thank you, our faithful viewers. Yes, you've learned more about the sewer system than you ever thought you would want to know by watching another edition of Inside Town Hall.
TV 79, we're going to go on the record.
This is the Town of Darien Sewer Commission.
This is a special meeting of the Darien Board of Education Curricula Committee.
I would like to call this regular meeting of the Board of Selectmen to order.
The special meeting of the Advisory Board of Health.
Regular meeting of the Darien Board of Finance to order.
Thank you very much, Channel 79.
Thank you, TV 79.
Channel 79, we're done. Thank you very much.
Thank you, TV 79.
Thank you, Channel 79.
Thank you, TV 79.
Thank you, Channel 79. We are done.
Good night, Channel 79.